So I'm going to see, what do you know here and now? Not the routes you took to get there. What? Teaching differentiation might change multiple pathways to get you to the same point. Oh, so they used a neat notebook, a sloppy notebook. They needed extra assistance. I gave them 5 examples because the first 4 didn't work. That's changing the pathway, changing the avenues I might take. I found out this kid is totally into ice fishing. So I did an analogy with this political system or the scientific process of this math idea and ice fishing, and he totally got it. It was like a mini epiphany. That was me changing the pathway. I don't give you a grade on that. I give you a grade on what you can know and do right now. You know, like the bar exam. I really don't care the homework you did in law school. What can you do now? The driver's license test. Can you pass the test now? Not what you did months ago to prepare for this. That's huge. The grade is what you know at the end of learning cycle, not the routes you took to get there, but I will explain the routes you took to get there on a separate place on the report card. Take a look. This cartoon was drawn in the 1960s. The sad part, people still recognize the truth of it today. It still exists. Take a moment and read that. Now, a high school kid, as a student, as a freshman, heard his teacher talking about it. She had actually been talking to me, and I showed this cartoon. She took it back to our class and said, what do you guys think of this? And the students said this. We learned so many truths from the students. Said this, you know, I know why you guys are laughing at it and think school is unfair, but that actually is very legitimate. The standard is get in the tree. Your job, teach, is to give us the tools to get there. And there might be different techniques, different tools, different levels of support for different kids. But the goal is, and you can grade us against it, did we get in the tree? Did we learn the stuff? So we actually drew something in the style of that illustrator, and I'm going to share these drawings with you. I didn't have permission to put them in the handout, so you don't have these. You have to look up here. But this is what he did. The monkey gets up there, especially if there's a banana. No problem. But how does the elephant get in the tree? Oh, it's a counterweight with a pulley system. Elephant's in the tree. That was what the grade was. Get in the tree. The standard is get in the tree. The fish, helicopter going up. Cool. I love the helmet on the seal rocketing from the circus cannon. Ready? And the dog is so smart, just rolls up a staircase and climbs to the very top. So as different routes, I don't give you a different grade because the standard was not, how did you get there? The standard was, get in the tree. The evidence is, you're actually in the tree. That's helpful. And the teacher provided different techniques, different ways to cope with that, rather than one size fits all. That's powerfully important as we move forward. We talked about this already. Is what the kids carry forward. So I'm a big believer, you better put previous curriculum on subsequent tests. I tell teachers. What? Think about it. Kid does a persuasive essay, just to continue that example, gets an A on it. 2 months later, I don't reteach anything. I'll give them time to peer critique and draft and all that stuff. And they turn in a second persuasive essay. That grade counts most of all. It can supersede the previous one or count more heavily. Wait a minute, Rick, what if that grade goes down? Then the grade goes down. Candid, honest report is always the greater gift, even if it's a harsh reality. It's huge. But wait, if you're into redos and retakes, they can totally relearn the stuff and then go ahead and be assessed anew. And they're fine, because you have the whole year really to master this stuff. And it turns out learning is reiterative. You have to do stuff a lot, over and over. How'd you guys get good at your jobs? Those of you who have outside the home jobs, let alone inside the home jobs, how'd you get good at your jobs? You did it a lot. You didn't do it just 2 or 3 times to say, I'm copacetic, I've totally mastered this. There's so much more to it. We're criterion referenced. You know what that means? It means when you say, how is this child doing in the class? I tell you how he's doing in relation to the learning goals. He can titrate liquids. He understands alkali versus non-alkali elements, covalent bonds. He can write an introduction to an essay that will knock your socks off. Literally, you will be sockless. All these different things go on. He can do it. I don't say this. He's above average. Because that's how he's doing in relation to other children. That's good for some conversations, but for the report card and making decisions and documenting progress and providing feedback, you better tell me how he's rallying around the assigned standards. That's huge. Now, if you have an uncomfortable feeling about some of the standards, yeah, be a part of that committee and that conversation. But standards-based grading is taking any curriculum, whatever it is, whether it be one you guys just invent for your own community, it'd be one that Iowa does, one that the federal government, whatever it is, and saying, here's an honest report of where your child is. Then, teachers have to sit together and figure this out. One of the examples I like to use is like, okay, fact versus opinion. Do you remember this one? I don't think did I share it with you already? I don't think I did. It was another group I did. Fact versus opinion. What do you guys think is important? They can identify fact and identify opinion. Is that enough for mastery? No. They can create fact and create opinion. Okay, that's enough for mastery. No. They can revise something that's too opinionated and make it more factual. Oh, that's good. Let's do that. No. They can manipulate somebody's opinion by including or omitting certain strategic fact. That's a deft application. Let's save that for the gifted class. No, that's basic citizenship. Which one is excellent? Which one's almost excellent? Math teachers sit together and do this. Okay, seriously, guys. The standard is this. Students will be able to identify or determine surface area and volume of three-dimensional solids. All right? What solids are we going to do? Let's do a cube, because that's easy. Okay? But at this grade level, we need to do more. Okay, how about a rectangular prism like a shoebox? Good, we'll do that one. How about a rectangular pyramid? You have to get the area of the base plus the area of the four triangles around it. Oh, add them all, surface. This is good. Hey, wait a minute. What about pentagonal prism? Pentagonal pyramid. I'm not sure how to do that myself, so we shouldn't teach it to children. Okay, fine. What about cone, cylinder, and sphere? That involves pi. My kids are already irrational. But let's say the teachers in the math department at this grade level say, okay, 7 three-dimensional solids. And a child gets 5 surface area correct, 6 volume. That's 11 out of 14. Do we just translate that to a percent? They have to negotiate what they'll tolerate. What do you look for when it comes to transitive and intransitive verbs and diffusion and osmosis? They can just identify in meiosis and mitosis, zygote, gamete, haploid, diploid. They don't have to talk about hybrids or mutants. They don't have to talk about DNA really being a spider spinning its own web as opposed to a double helix. Right? They don't have to talk about prophase, metaphase, anaphase, telophase, 2 new daughter cells. They can just identify them and point them out. Is that enough? You see, teachers need to be able to do that, to be able to explain exactly, to make the implicit explicit. And that takes a little bit of time to pull it off, and that's what we're about. And then what does it mean to go above and beyond? If you have a score on your scale that means this means goes above and beyond, the teacher better be unusually good at making the invisible visible. No, let me guess what's on my teacher's mind. Because some students are better at that than others. So you should ask, I noticed that your 4.0, your A, your 100 is only for those who go above and beyond. Can you be very transparent, please, on what does that mean? And I interview teachers a lot. What does that mean? And they say, well, he showed more oomph. Can you elaborate on that? Well, exactly, he elaborated. And what does that look like? I've seen teachers who do interactive notebooks and learning logs and so on. And all the kids got B's, but the ones who got A's added glitter to the border. This drives me nuts. And it brings shame in our profession. No way. You better show advanced mental dexterity, intellectual agility. In 2010, it turned out we were struggling to find enough Rhodes Scholars to go to Oxford for the first time in the history of the United States. All these candidates could name every president, every prime minister for every country, all the imports and exports back through the decades, but they couldn't do this. They couldn't analyze how this political conflict in this part of the world was successfully resolved, pull insight and wisdom from that, and apply it here in this political conflict to try to resolve that. That was beyond them. See, teachers were quite guilty in these students' paths of teaching to elicit a singular response. Got to get the answer right for the standardized test. Please be mindful that being good at taking a standardized test does not qualify you for creative contribution to society or successful citizenship. It's a test of how do you do with high-stakes, inappropriate testing situations compared to other children around the state, and how they do with inappropriate high-stakes testing situations. You know, timed writing is not a test of writing. No writer ever would tolerate. You have 90 minutes to take a prompt with which you have no personal meaning. Pre-write, cluster, mind map, draft, and then put up some beautiful writing at the end, that's not writing. That's playing a game of school. So we can understand it's mentally ill for a kid to think his value is only in relation to his test score. And stop rallying around the test score as everything. It's one indicator of several. That's legitimate. And ETS, Pearson, the College Board, the people who design standardized tests will tell you the exact same thing. It's always in conjunction, not the sole diagnostic factor as you go through it. So we want to really decide what's exceeding mean if we're going to claim exceeding. And not just leave it up to the teacher's personal opinion. Out there, they can have personal opinions, right? But they have to express what it is. Rick Stiggins, who's a big assessment expert, often says this, and it's kind of like Stephen Covey, begin with the end in mind. All right, here we go. He says this, children can hit any target they can see. I want you to think about something for a minute. I'm a stranger. I walk into your children's classroom and I interview them. What are you supposed to be learning right now? Would every one of the students in that class be able to tell me accurately what it is? That's a miracle in itself, but that's really cool. But the next one is, and where are you in relation to that? See, if they know the target and where they are at any given moment as they move towards it, they hit the target dramatically more often. So to be honest, I got to tell you, can kids learn without grades? Yes, grades can get in the way. Can they learn without descriptive feedback? Not even close. So I better be really good at formative assessment, the assessment that's along the way, and helping kids see where they are in relation to the goal, and they actually achieve the more I do that. It's one of the most profound things that we changed in our school district as we went through it. This is a quote in my classroom. The kids come up to me and go, Mr. Wormeli, on this test that you just returned, I seem to have ridden the cow. Yes, it was utterly ridiculous in a bovine way, but let's ruminate together. Some of you will get that tomorrow morning on the way to work. Yeah. But the idea that the kid can recite or parrot what the textbook said, or what the teacher said, or the website said, is not sufficient for mastery. So we have to decide what it is. Do you remember the TV show House? My favorite part was the whiteboard, you know, the dry erase. What do they always write on it? The symptoms and the evidence. Do you remember this? And they would sit in a small group and go, actually, that's important, that's not important, that's relevant, that's irrelevant. Remember that? That to me was the most exciting moment. We're trying to figure that out. That's what we're talking about. It's not better to say what the standard is. What evidence will we tolerate is the idea. And then I already showed you this. Remember that? So now, this is one of the Common Core standards. And this standard is actually at multiple grade levels. Let me see if we understand what it is. Let me read it out loud while you read it silently. Ready? Here we go. Cite the textual evidence that most strongly supports an analysis of what the text says explicitly, as well as inferences drawn from the text. Are we clear? Colonel Jessup, are we clear? I'm looking for a few good teachers. I don't know. So the teachers get together and they ask each other these questions. Give them a read. Wait, there's more. The student can do it twice. Is that mastery? Or he can do it 20 times. What's mastery? It's what the teachers who are supposed to be subject experts declare. So you need to give them opinion if you've got an opinion on that. You might work in the scientific field and you want to talk to the science teachers and say, can I just tell you what's really leveraging and really important? They actually need to know quantitative versus qualitative analysis. Nomenclature and taxonomic reference, yeah, you really need to teach that. But this other thing is not as important. That's good. It's your community. If you notice, in the Constitution of the United States, it never says anybody has a right to an education. Those are in state constitutions, nowhere in the United States Constitution. So you are in control of this. This is very powerful. So take advisement from subject experts, but create that sense of, this is what's important to our community as we go through it. This is one of the next generation science standards that are coming out. I don't know if you were curious about it, but take a look at that. Develop a model to describe cycling of Earth's materials. So they clarify what they're saying. This would mean you would teach melting, crystallization, weathering, deformation, sedimentation, and so on. But the assessment boundary, you really don't need to go into the naming of minerals. That's okay. So they give you kind of a range. But beyond that, you get to figure out what it is. The rise of democracy. From 1789 to the modern era. That was the standard of learning for a class that I taught one time. What am I supposed to teach? There was nothing. All right, I think I should teach Magna Carta, indirect democracy versus a republic, okay? Constitutionalism, constitutional monarchy, Canada, Jefferson, Montesquieu, Hobbes, Locke. Yeah, probably. And not just the guy that was on Lost. Okay. But you have to figure out what that is, and it should be transparent to you all. That's huge. You should ask about it if it's not really clear to you. So this is my definition of mastery. And I tell teachers all the time, rip it up, toss it to the wind, or use it. I don't care. But here's what I value. Anybody can be a parrot. I want to know. If you can break it down to its component pieces, explain it in other perspectives cogently, and use it strategically. In my PE class, I had a kid who just every day would do a bounce pass. The other team figured it out. They kept stealing the ball in the basketball game. Bounce pass, bounce. Dude, come here. Can you do a chest pass, maybe a lollipop over their heads? Do anything. But he wasn't strategic, so he's not mastered it. I can do this thing really well, but I can't read the situation and decide when to change it according to the greatest advantage of that moment in the game. That would be masterful. Let's try this. Up. He climbed up. What part of speech is up in that sentence? Anybody know? Wait, I got preposition, I got adverb. Cognitive dissonance. Oh! It's actually an adverb because it modifies the verb climb. Tells how or where he climbed. Up is an adverb. Wait a minute. He climbed up the ladder. Now what is up? Preposition. Because it connects an object, ladder, to another word sense. It begins a prepositional phrase, up the ladder. Oh, but wait a minute. Put parentheses around that phrase in your mind's eye. Up the ladder. That whole phrase is modifying the verb climbed. So it's serving as an adverb. As the phrase is. Wait, here was an adverb. Here is a preposition, a part of something larger, also serving as an adverb. That's nuance. That's mastery. Mental dexterity. You can handle novelty and curveballs. In this math problem, I inserted absolute value. Oh. There's a fraction for a coefficient. Oh. We can do it. First grade student walks in wearing a coat, and he says, "Brr," and there's snow on their shoulders. What could his classmates infer about the weather outside? It's cold. First grade students can do inference, which is a very grown-up abstract skill. But leap from that to what was Remarque trying to say about government propaganda and all quiet in the Western Front? Is that more grown up? Yeah. So which one is the A in 5th grade versus 8th versus 11th? Teachers have to do that. And there's that idea of surface area, but I've already talked about that a little bit. I'd now like to leap to this. There are 3 pairs of questions. The first one is what you see in most schools, K-12. The second one is what they ask in college. Your students, your children, will do poorly in college if they don't have a good, steady experience with those second type of questions. So the first one's important, but you also need the mental dexterity of the second. Take a look, see if you see the difference. All right, pretty clear difference? All right, we're going to talk for another 10, 12 minutes, then we'll get to some of those questions about some of the other things that change. Those are actually 2 of my students. If you just search on my name and giant squid, you'll see some work I did at the Smithsonian with giant squid, and I actually wrote a whole program, how do you dissect squid? I know, it's weird, but it's fun. At any rate, one of the things we've learned is this. Kids can do homework, but they scribble through it. No. That's a letter grade of doing. I want the grade to be about learning. So do your grades ever get confused? This is about compliance versus this is about real mastery. That's a real problem. And I have to be very, very clear. So I think every single report card, you should have a little square, homework completion average, because that's helpful. It should be reported, and there should be positive, negative consequences. Really, if a kid has a really low completion rate, but really high performance, maybe the homework didn't really matter a whole lot. I mean, seriously, I've had teachers and parents email me, "My child has 6 100s. There were 6 tests. He got 100 in all of them. He didn't do any homework. His grade was an F." What? Can you interview the teacher for me? Could you ask me seriously why the teacher did that? I already did. She said she was trying to teach him responsibility or a lesson. Isn't it ironic But on the pretense of teaching something so moral and powerful and ethical as doing your work, self-discipline, things like that, you actually do something that knowingly falsifies the grade and breeds resentment. I would submit to you this: if the kid could do to that level of performance 100% all the stuff you're asking without doing the practice you assigned, who's the slow learner? Homework should matter. That homework should have been different. The class complexity should have been different. But you don't teach kids to do homework because he didn't do it and he still got an A. It didn't matter. You teach kids to do homework when they realize doing homework after school hours actually leads to my subsequent success. And you've got to paint that picture with them all the time. And there's some suggestions. I can offer you some suggestions how to do that. But we have to be clear. That picture has nothing to do with on the slide. I just thought it was funny and I put it there. Okay? Looking over here on the left. One of the things that really helps parents move on, let alone teachers and principals, is they realize in order to advance in education, you have to transcend the current operating metaphor. Really, truly, we used to call children blank slates. They were totally empty, and we could color on them and make them whatever we want. And now we know today that students come into our classrooms, and what they come in having inside them, their frame of reference, their experience, actually affects dramatically what they learn. How they make connections, how they don't make connections. So it's actually huge. They're not a blank slate. That was overcoming the current metaphor. Those of you who study science, string theory is actually not well regarded anymore. It's more M theory now. And whatever's new metaphor is going to be down the road. Okay. So here's the old metaphor. Grades are compensation. They're not reward. They're not validation. If you hold on to that, you'll always see things. In fact, you'll never get standards-based grading. They're only communication, not some kind of bribery, because then you distort them. You bribe with them, you give things, you distort the accuracy. We want to be very, very clear. I will do the affirmation will come with your success. It's kind of like this. You know when you have a GPS? I got this from a friend. It's not my own idea, but it seems to work. You know you have a GPS and you're following it and you're looking, you want to get to that blue pin or blue flag at the end? And you're going through, you're taking all these pathways and so on, and the blue pin is there. That would be the grade, okay? It's a declaration, you have arrived. There. The affirmation and validation comes through you. Ah, I'm finally there. I can go to the movie. I can go to the party now. Or whatever it is. But the grade itself wasn't the reward. It was just an indicator that you're at this point. That's it. Don't distort it into something else. It doesn't help serve the cause. So we talked about this one already. Assessment is not a gotcha enterprise. Fair isn't always equal. These are actually two pictures from my classes over the years where the kids are taking high-stakes final exams, but they seem awfully alternative. See here, these students had to research historical figures, and then they had to research modern debate issues. And then they had to portray those historical figures as they debated modern issues, and then break character. We would do this in evening performance for parents. They had to break character and explain from the research why they thought this person would have responded this way. Is that a higher order thinking skill? Yeah. In case you're wondering, that's Rosa Parks having words with Bob Dylan. In the right, here's a kid taking a high-stakes exam, but it's an open textbook. So it's not a test of information recall. There are tests of that. But in this case, he was just trying to find evidence so he could back up his claim and make a really coherent argument. And he's using assisted technology and AlphaSmart. And he has an open and empty Nutri-Grain bar wrapper right there in the middle of a high-stakes final exam. I know. We serve bottled water to all children and snacks on every standardized test day. Morale and performance go up. Because sometimes kids come without breakfast. Okay, a lot of times. So we want them to do the best they can. So we hydrate them and we feed them and they grow. I know, weird. So now I realize that fair isn't always equal, and by golly, I will always be fair. I will rarely be equal. So I might do different assessments for different kids, but I hold you accountable for the same evidence. It's mathematically calculable, so it must be credible. No. The difference between getting a graduate school and a life of dreams fulfilled and not getting a graduate school and a life of dreams deferred, Langston. Some of you will get that later. There's a difference between a 90% and an 89. One dumb percentage point. If I interview two students, one got a 95, one got a 93, can I really determine mastery to that level of precision? No. It's too precise. But we do that kind of stuff. It's not just 2 percentage points. We do it over 1/10 of a percentage point. And I've seen valedictorian determined by 1/1000th of a decimal point. That is the person that got the $40,000 college scholarship to an in-state tuition, got to address the graduating class because he was that 1/10, 1/1000th of a decimal point off? One person said, yeah, in our school we use 10,000ths. You can't determine it. That was arbitrarily made up so we could sort humans, not as an accurate response, an accurate piece of information about where they were. So we have to stop arguing about the calculation. I had a kid who had 93.4, and 94 was the lowest A in my community. 93.4. He said, can't you round it up, man? I'm so close. You're in the class, you don't have an A. Come on, be a buddy, be a pal. And I said, you know what? If you work a little harder, I'm sure you'll do that, and you'll get your 93.5 and higher, and I'll be justified in rounding up. But it's 93.4. If I round, which way will I go? I was hiding behind 1/10 of a decimal point. Man, I should have sat down right there and then and did this. Tell me everything about this standard and this standard. What do you know off the top of your head, out of the blue? What are you carrying forward? And really ask follow-up questions to see if he really knows it and made an executive decision. Right there and then. Now this might be scary for you, but our teachers are trained in this, so trust me, it actually works. Think about it. Parents, this is in the handbook. Parents, grades are first and foremost determined by a teacher's professional opinion of your child's performance against a standard, not mathematical calculation. And teachers have been trained how to analyze student products against standards and will be glad to explain their decision at a mutually agreeable time. Does that scare you? Some teachers, it's very frightening because they can hide behind the math. No, the numbers don't lie. They do. You know statistics can be manipulated and manipulative at any given moment. So what are you about? You better have evidence to back up that claim.